Hello, everyone, and welcome to Astrology in the News for February 23rd, 2018. Almost through the month of February. Man, it's been a pretty crazy month, and it seems like we always have crazy months now. So, hey, we'll see what March brings when I do the March astrology forecast. But namaste, Justin Skippy Trudeau. I call him Skippy because he looks like Skippy from Family Ties, and he means well. He's trying to fit in here, but my God, I mean, a white dude wearing all his Indian garb, it's like, oh, Jesus Christ, dude. Speaking of, we will be talking about him later, but yeah, so Skippy's trying to fit in, and of course, he's on his Indian trip, and he did this to fit into a Sikh temple. And this is kind of interesting because Sikhs really don't dress this way. This looks more like Hindu garb. Since I'm a Vedic astrologer, I understand a little bit. But anyway, Skippy. So here's his birth chart anyway. So Justin Trudeau, we actually have his birth time for the former ski instructor and drama teacher turned president, like our reality star and billionaire turned president. But anyway, let's see. He has a Leo ascendant, and actually that is pretty good for politics and leadership. Going around the chart, Mercury and Jupiter and Neptune are all conjunct in the sign of Scorpio. Usually pretty good for private investigators or people that like to get to the bottom of things. It's interesting since he was a drama teacher. I really don't see acting here, so that's probably why I decided to go into politics. Sun being in the sign of, let's see, right over here is in the sign of, what is that? Sagittarius. Sun and Sagittarius generally, and Sun and Jupiter in the sign of Sagittarius generally indicates somebody that's well educated. Venus and Rahu conjunct in the sixth house in the sign of Capricorn. Venus in the sixth house with Rahu can show overspending. I mean, this guy has spent a lot of Canada's money, so I hope you guys got a good IOU or a pretty big bank account because that's going to come to fruition at some time. Mars and the Moon are conjunct in the eighth house, and this could actually show somebody that's a little bit too emotional in general, really, and it could show trouble with other men, sudden surprises, prone to depression. Mars is okay in Cancer. I'm sorry, in the sign of Pisces, and the Moon, it behaves on a very emotional level, but like I say, it's like a deep, subtle level. Saturn's actually pretty well placed in the sign of Taurus in the 10th house, so you could see somebody having a career in civil service. So I would say that's where we really get his, where it came to fruition in his chart. But if you look, he's got Mars conjunct Shades, and that's really not a good start either. So what you'd want to do is when we're taking a look at his dasha cycle over here in the upper right, is he going through a Mars dasha anytime soon? No, he already went through it. So he looks like he's going to be doing pretty good. Will he be reelected? Let's see. He's going to be in the moon. I don't think so. I don't think he's going to be reelected just by looking at this. But when we call an election, we want to look at the opponent's chart because that always helps. I think in Canada, though, it's not one versus the other. The parliament elects the president or the prime minister. Shows how much I know. Sorry, Canada. Anyway, oh me so horny. Oh me so horny. Oh me so horny. Megan Barry's getting around. Yes, Megan Barry is the Megan Barry is the mayor of Nashville, who is, of course, having sex scandals because we can't go 20, like a couple years without anybody having sex scandals because sex, 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 right? So let's take a look at her chart, though. All right, so I do not have her birth time. However, we can go by the moon, and she actually has her moon is in the sign of Scorpio. That's somewhat of a lustful sign, not exactly, but it can show that at times. Saturn is very well placed, retrograde in the third house in the sign of Capricorn. Focus, business, government. Okay, Capricorn is also a government sign. It could also show business, but Saturn in the third house does very well because it takes a malefic, it puts it in its home sign, and it also too in the third house, a malefic gets better over time. So when you have a malefic in the third house, or any of the Upachaya houses actually, which are third, sixth, and 11, it tends to really lessen its effects. Okay, Jupiter in the fifth house. Okay, this is generally good for children in the sign of Pisces. Let's see. Now, if we're going to look for infidelity, we look at where the seventh lord is placed. Seventh lord is Venus. Venus is in the 11th house. Not necessarily a bad placement, actually. So maybe she was approached by the man. I don't know. And also, too, we do not know what her ascendant is. So, like, if this were in the eighth house, it could show a little bit of infidelity. Now, her Mercury is well placed. It's actually retrograde, but it's exalted in the sign of Virgo, conjunct the Sun and also Venus. So, this being in the 11th house, this is actually a pretty good, prosperous position for some of these planets. Venus, and now that I think about it, Venus is debilitated, and since that's a karaka of marriage and the ruler of the seventh house from the moon, that could show difficulty in marriage, okay? Then, of course, Mars being in the 12th house in the sign of Libra, that's really not too bad of a placement here. Mars has difficulty in Libra because you got an inherently masculine planet in a sign that's represented by a feminine planet. So I can kind of see where some of the marriage troubles were coming up. And also, too, if you look, she's in her Venus Dasha. So really stuff that's related around Venus is going to come to fruition now, okay? So next we have Ivanka Ski Alot. You get the joke. She went to Korea to help close the Olympics. So Ivanka, don't have a birth time for her either. However, she has a lot of prominent planetary placements. Red leather, yellow leather, red leather, yellow leather. Anyway, if you look at her chart, my God, she has Polychron, conjunct Rahu, Spica. My God, what an awesome star. That's a star of luck. Conjunct Jupiter. Arcturus is also in the same general areas as conjunct Jupiter. So let's see. So those are the major stars. And then let's see, looking at the rest of her planetary placements, Sun and Jupiter are also in the sign of Libra. So, if her ascendant was in Capricorn, this could actually show the strong possibility of a presidential run. So she also has some other leadership qualities, like Mars is in the sign of Leo for leadership. Rahu is in the sign of Cancer, which isn't necessarily bad. So if anybody knows Ivanka's birth time, email to me at nobsyoga@gmail.com. Okay. Now her Mercury is very well placed. Her Mercury is in the sign of Virgo, of course, and that's a sign of exaltation. Conjunct Saturn, that's a little bit of difficulty. So she is very, very particular, very meticulous, pays a lot of attention to detail, which can be somewhat difficult to her. She probably pays too much attention to detail and she's probably way too picky. So that's just one way to interpret that. But otherwise, she's got a lot of great planetary placements here. And also, to look at Jupiter, if you look down in the Vamsa chart, it's Vargotama. That means that it gains extra power because it's in the same sign in the Navamsha house as it is in the Rasi chart. So interesting. I really want to see her ascendant. And then we look into the future, she's going to be in her Venus dasha. So, is there anything like a Venus sublord? I don't know. I'm looking at 2028. I'm wondering how that would go when that comes up. So, anyway, I could see her running for president at some point. Now, Jesus ain't a white dude? Yes, I highly doubt Jesus was a white guy running around wearing a white nightie. Okay, so I mean, let's be real. Jesus basically was of the peasant class. He was outside all the time. He was a Jew, so he's not going to have light skin. I mean, this guy was probably had a rockin' tan. And also in this article too, it says Jesus was probably pretty muscular. Why? Because he was of the working class. So, he was raised a carpenter. So yeah, Jesus was not white. This should not be a surprise that Jesus was your typical looking Jew with dark skin, olive skin, because like I said, he was outside all the time. He had to sleep outside. When back in the day, when you were not tan, that was considered a sign of prosperity because you weren't part of the menial labor out there, picking cabbage or whatever they did for fun, picking olives, whatever. Dates. Jesus picked dates. So as far as Jesus's birth chart, this is an example of a chart that was brought up by another astrologer, and this was I forgot the date, but this was in the year 32. Now, if you look at this chart, you're like, wow, this is a really great chart. I don't think this is Jesus's chart. I actually think that somebody took software and ran this back to look for a very, very good planetary what's it called, an aspect formation, which is called a grand sextile. Extremely rare, happens like 2 or 3 times every 100 years. The other thing that makes this very questionable is if you look at the ascendant is almost conjunct the sun and Mercury. That means that according to this chart, Jesus was born close to dawn. My personal opinion is if Jesus was born close to dawn, we probably would have heard about something about it in the Bible, okay? And also, too, I mean, in the year 32, there's a lot of archaeological evidence. I mean, you look at the Roman emperor at that time, he's not mentioned in the Bible. Also, too, Herod was really, really dead at that time. And also Pontius Pilate was down around. Pontius Pilate died in 52, and he's mentioned in the Bible. So I find this is not Jesus's chart in my personal astrological opinion. This one is the one that I think is Jesus's chart, and this is the one that I ratified. Um, and so the reason why I think this is Jesus's chart is this is a of let's see if you want to look it up, it's November 2nd of the year one. So what I did is I took the planets and I looked for what would be a good indicator of the Star of Bethlehem. And generally it's going to be a conjunction of the two brighter planets in the sky, Jupiter and Venus. And even in this case, this is in the moon. So when you look at this chart is more of somebody that's a political radical. And if you particularly look at the opposition of Pluto and Uranus, this is somebody that's going to go against the norm, okay? Then also too, you have the square Saturn. So this to me is doesn't have to be Jesus's chart, but if I were to bring up a good example of what Jesus's chart would look like, this is what I think, especially given the timing and compared to Jesus' life, this is, I think, is more accurate than the last one. So anyway, with that, I would like to say thank you. And of course, subscribe and like and watch more. And of course, if you want to book a consultation, all the contact information is below. And if you want to also, if you want me to cover a topic, shoot me an email. I will be more than happy to take a look at it. But with that, everybody have a great evening and also happy Friday.